So, Rebecca, the dogs have mauled you.
It was more of a licking. It was a loving lick.
Yeah, they love you so much. I mean, the little one's afraid of everybody.
She's so cute, though. It's just the softest fur.
Yeah.
It's like she's a bunny or something.
Yeah. And she has extra thumbs on her feet.
Yeah, the toes are fantastic.
Yeah.
Off the sides.
Yeah. They just hang there. There's no bone in them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because there are cats. There's the Maine Coon cat can have a lot of toes.
Okay.
Maybe she's part Maine Coon cat.
Maybe she is. And also, every year around this time when we bust out the Christmas gear, I always wonder, is Rebecca going to be uncomfortable or displeased or judging me or reminded of all the times when her birthday had been eclipsed by Christmas cheer?
It's more when it comes out after Halloween. That's like I think even maybe before Halloween. I think I was at like a Lowe's trying to find Halloween stuff, and there was already 2 massive aisles of Christmas stuff. And I just thought, does it sell that well that it gets that much shelf time that far ahead of time? Yeah. They had one teeny tiny light up menorah, and you should have seen my processing of like, should I get it? Wow, I've never seen that before, but like, I don't want to support them putting holiday stuff out this early. I ended up not getting it, but I've regretted it ever since. Because you just don't ever see Hanukkah stuff. I mean, I enjoy it. You know, I'm going to go to Zoo Lights this year. Like, I think it's fun. I just don't participate in it. Have I told you my funniest? I have 2 super funny Eli Christmas stories. Have I told them to you? So the first one is Eli's like 2.5 or 3 and like finally has consciousness of kind of what's going on. And he pulls me aside and they say, "Mommy, why do these people have socks hanging on their walls?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Like, right. If this made no sense to you at all, this would be like a really, like as a child, you're like, we don't like tack our socks up on the wall. What is happening here? Mm-hmm. So that was a funny discussion. And then the other one, they were a little bit older and they got in an argument with this woman. We were like at QFC, which is our grocery store here. And the checkout person says, "Oh, well, Santa's coming soon to your house." And Eli says, "No, they're not." And she says, "Yes, they are. They come to every house." And Eli says, "No, they don't. They don't come to our house." And
how old was Eli at the time?
Like 4. And they're not backing down. And she can't give it up. And like has no conceptualization that we might not be celebrating for whatever reason.
Yeesh.
And then she's looking at me like I'm some kind of horror that I keep Santa from my kid. But Eli's just totally deadpan, like, "No, Santa's not coming."
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Yeah. Well, does it help to think about Christmas as 98% pagan?
Yeah. I mean, I delight in the lights and the smells and the cookies, and I can't complain about all that stuff.
Yeah.
It does make me sad that actually this year for my 53rd birthday, I finally have enough people in my life who don't want to attend whatever Christmas gathering that they've been invited to, that like I will have a quorum at my house to watch non-Christmas movies and make trinkets and hang out and make pancakes.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, your birthday is on Christmas.
It's actually Christmas Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a long ride of my birthday doesn't mean like most people like love their birthdays or hate or like get into it but it was somehow mine is like so predestined, decided for me.
Well, the prime birthday years are what, like 3rd grade-ish time?
Yeah.
And you were in Tucker Carlsonville in San Diego around then?
I think I'm in Oakland I'm in San Francisco or Oakland. I think at some point around there, I had 3 people over at some point near my birthday.
Not that Tucker Carlson and San Diego are the same thing, but you went to school.
I went to middle school with Tucker Carlson.
In San Diego.
In San Diego.
So when you were in the Bay Area, were you just surrounded with Christmas and Christians?
I mean, I think so. Or even if you don't really celebrate it, it is not a time that you go to your friend's birthday party. It is a time to be with family. And days before and days after, right? Like, it's not like...
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the few holidays that spans several days. And your birthday was never associated with, I mean, did you ever think about just changing your birthday?
I have. I tried to do a half birthday, a cupcake birthday. I tried to do June 25th for a long time. It got no traction. So I'm just not a birthday person. Like, people are like, "Are you excited?" And no. I mean, I am amazed that I made it another year. And I am so psyched. I'll report back what it's like to have had my first kind of birthday party as an adult with adult friends. But, it's usually super chill. It's not something to get hyped up about. And there's definitely a large truck of birthday presents that should be coming my way. There's a very funny website.
Meaning that they're owed to you
Yes.
from people that neglected.
Yeah. There's a very funny website called Born on Christmas that is all of the grievances that we have with the public.
Right, because even if you celebrate Christmas, you feel like you're getting half a birthday and half a Christmas, or not a birthday and a full Christmas or something, because your parents can just roll in the celebration to the same day for you. And everyone else is celebrating their Christmas on your birthday. So, yeah. Well, by the time you get to, I don't know, 23, I think birthdays are just painful on some level. So, but what I try to do on my birthday is just take a day to wake up and not have any plans and just see what happens. And I try to do something that is, relaxed or something. I don't know. Doesn't always work out, but
So I like to watch all my favorite movies on my birthday. So it's usually some combination of Nightmare Before Christmas, Singing in the Rain, Fifth Element, Rogue One, Galaxy Quest.
wow. I didn't know. I mean, I knew you were a nerd, but I didn't. I mean, Galaxy Quest.
That's one of the greatest movies of all
Galaxy
time.
Quest. I used to have that on VHS. It was like one of the few things I had on VHS in the 90s or early aughts. And I would watch it. It's eternally rewatchable. It's so good.
so funny.
Yeah.
It's so painfully funny.
Yeah. Nightmare Before Christmas is a classic, of course. Do you sing along with the songs?
Quietly. I have a horrible singing voice. In
I don't
fact,
think I knew that.
we talked recently about dreams. I dreamed recently that I was singing and people were listening. And that's the detail of my dream, that I woke up being like, whoa. Because usually I'm like hiding in the background. I can harmonize, but I cannot.
Wait, you can harmonize, but you can't. Harmonizing is way harder than just singing the melody.
For me, it's easier.
Or do you just think you're harmonizing?
No, I'm good. I'm good at it.
Okay. Well, that's bizarre. That doesn't make any sense, because if you can harmonize, you can melodize. Melodize, that's like saying I can sprint faster than Usain Bolt, but I can't jog or something. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I guess I can hear, if I can hear someone else doing it, I can imitate. I can accompany them, but I can't.
Oh, you don't mean harmonize. You mean sing along with. Because harmony is you're singing a different note entirely. You're singing a whole other line.
I don't know what I'm saying.
You're singing unison with someone that's not harmonizing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, you could say on a broader sense you're in harmony with someone, but you're singing with. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that makes total sense.
I can do backup.
Yeah. I used to be in a choir group in high school, and one of the tenors was like that. He couldn't sing on his own, so he was shorter than me, and he would stand right in front of me, and I would just sing in his ear, and he was great. As long as I was right there in his ear, then he could, then he could sing. Albeit this was like vocal jazz arrangements where the tenors are often in some very weird zones of harmony that are hard to sing. Okay, all is right in the world now that I understand you're singing unison. Let's get to an email. Patron Camilla posted on Patreon and asked the following question. I'm curious about what your opinion is about gender reveal parties. I'm typically not fond of them, as the name seems inaccurate to me. A more accurate name would be sex reveal party. And the ones I've seen gender reveal parties, generally promote old, tired gender stereotypes like wearing pink or blue, having themes like baller or ballerina or touchdowns or tutus. I haven't seen that one, Jiminy Crickets. And then patron Aaron replied on Patreon and said, I feel like the rise of gender reveal parties have come from the increased prevalence of influencers. Also, it has created a new degree of consumerism and pressure to make everything a performance for the consumption of others. However, I think that if gender reveal parties make people happy, I'm not going to be a person that says you have to stop. What do you think, Rebecca?
I'm not into gender reveal parties. There's a fair amount of fires that are started by fireworks from gender reveal parties.
Yep. Do you want me to tell you some famous? So El Dorado fire, California, 2020. The couple, last name Jimenez, set off a smoke bomb, somewhere near dry brush during a gender reveal photo shoot. It wasn't even a reveal party, but photo shoot is pretty similar. And it set the grass on fire, and that sparked literally a massive fire and fires that ravaged California and burned down many homes, and many people were displaced, and the fires lasted 2 months. The couple is currently facing charges of involuntary manslaughter because people died, right? And other charges. A firefighter died, so there's that. Also, in this year, Mexico, a small plane crashed after dropping pink powder. Did you see this?
No.
So the pilot died. It's a really interesting video. So the person taking the video is looking at the couple, and behind the couple is some sort of display. It's a pretty big. It looks like almost like a wedding, and there's all the family members gathered around, and everyone's getting ready for the big reveal. And the way the reveal is happening is this small plane, like a little Cessna or one of those like duster plane kind of things, is coming toward the camera from behind the couple. And what it's supposed to do is dump this pink powder to indicate a girl, of course. But the pilot has some sort of malfunction or was coming in too hot or something, and I think pulled up too hard, and the wing snaps off.
Oh my God.
Just as the plane is right over the couple. But the most bizarre thing about, and then the plane proceeds to continue to fly overhead and crash like violently in a ball of flame, maybe 50 yards behind the camera, and the camera person kind of looks behind. But what's so bizarre about this scene, Rebecca, is that almost nobody notices that the plane crashed because they hear the plane, the pink powder falls, everyone just starts celebrating, including the couple, and they're hugging, and meanwhile you're watching the death of this pilot. And it's now, that didn't cause a fire, but well, it's just part of the tragedies that seem to follow the gender reveal party, in addition to the gender tragedies that happen.
Well, and why are we gender revealing? Why has this become a trend? And it's, I assume it's because of all of the hopes and dreams of what it will mean to have a boy or a girl. Your life will proceed in the following ways. You will have the following experiences. Your family will be X. And it's just not true. So there's so much intensity around getting pregnant, pregnancy, childbirth, raising kids these days. And it's interesting that it starts that pre-birth.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to have a fertilization party next.
Yeah. I mean, even that vision that you said, I'm glad you said that, because the vision is some sort of Disneyland vision in their head often. I mean, I don't want to accuse everyone. And, I've gone to gender reveal parties, and they can be fairly tame. Like a friend of mine had a gender reveal party, and it was just a cake, and they just cut open the cake, and they're like, oh. Whereas you can imagine a lot of people, it means this fantasy of, okay, yeah, when you hear the way that the patron puts it, baller or ballerina, what do you think of when you think of?
What is a ballerina?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Is that saying that they're a baller and a ballerina? Plus, a baller, I think of
As a player.
right.
Yeah.
As being not what. Well, I don't know. Each sex positivity. So I think it's pretty obvious why gender reveal parties are, and not just gender reveal parties, but just the whole
The
gender
gendering
construct
of children. Right. So that pink and blue stuff, I think, comes out of the 50s. Previous to that, children wore any color that they, that the parents could get their hands on. But this idea that you would kind of gender your child and show your child off for their gender
Right.
is a very new concept, I think, except for like in the royal elite.
No, even in the royal, I mean, we're talking about Western European people, but they tended, from my understanding, to dress all their kids in girl clothes and have girl hair. What they associate with girl hair. So you would have a young prince who had what we would associate today with young girl, long locks, and a dress, an angelic kind of lacy dress.
But I had the experience of going shopping with someone that had an infant recently. We were at Goodwill getting the haul of our lifetime, and they have a male child, and we were stocking up on kind of boy colors, blue colors, and then also some cheetah print and some pink, and we were just having a great time. And she went up to the cash register to pay, and the person at the cash register said, "Oh, I see you have your baby with you and you're shopping for someone else as well." And she said, "No, all these clothes are for my baby." But, the salesperson was confused. Like, how can all of these clothes be for one baby?
Yeah.
But it's like, actually, you can dress your baby.
What did the cashier say?
They were too confused. I mean, it was too loud. There was too much going on. It was not a nuanced conversation, but it was like the confusion in their mind that you were buying all of these clothes for the same baby. It was like, wow, this stuff runs deep.
Right. Not only confusion, but for some, it's offensive and abusive. I mean, I'm guessing that there are CPS calls from neighbors or grandmas or cousins when you have a parent that has an infant and the parent is not gender pigeonholing the child.
This actually happened with the woman who ran J. Crew for a long time, who came out as a lesbian. And in some ad campaign, she showed herself painting her bio boy's nails. And the vitriol that went towards her that she would do that online was so intense. This idea that you are demasculinizing your young child by doing this. Yes.
Yeah. And you don't have to look very far. And this is all well-tread ground since 60s and even before. But that if you have what is being identified as a boy and you dress him in girl clothes or have girl associated things like earrings or fingernail polish, then it's a high crime of demasculinizing. Whereas you take a young girl and you dress her in tomboy stuff, then that's cool because we hate women.
Yes, right.
To put it simply.
Right. It was actually Urvashti Vaid, I think her book was Homophobia, Weapon of Sexism.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those associations are predetermined. And of course, it's not the parents' fault. It's society's fault. The parents are just, you could have a parent who even wants to fight against it, but because of the pressures and the bullying and the harm that could happen to them and their family, they might have to adjust for it somehow. You know what I mean?
This happened actually when Eli was little. I think they were 4 or 5, and it was in the middle of winter here, and we needed to find a baseball hat. So I went to the Sears that used to be in South Seattle, and the first thing they went to was this hot pink rainbow Dora the Explorer baseball hat. And I was surprised at my own stuff where I was like, we can't buy that hat. Like, I cannot be the person in the airport with the gender non-conforming kid. And I talked them into a Cars hat. But I was just like, I have to choose, like, how much.
What were you worried about specifically?
The harassment of a young kid not presenting correctly around gender and how much energy I had.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I regret that decision to this day, and it would have been interesting to play it out.
Mm-hmm. So you knew it was wrong, so to speak, or unfair to Eli, but you were thinking of the bigger picture for not only Eli, but yourself, and just having things go more smoothly.
Right. And already traveling as a lesbian couple was already, it already had its own problems. And I just was like, my thought was literally, I don't have the energy for this. I don't have the energy to negotiate your gender presentation in an international airport.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, and that's a well-known phenomenon outside of lesbian couples, that when you have oppressed groups within a larger society that is oppressing that group, then there's a tendency to not try to present too many aggravants to the oppressor, and to overprove yourself that you are normal or acceptable or understandable. And gender is one of those things, that if you are Indian American and you're thinking, I already get enough shit for being Sikh and worrying that I'm going to be a terrorist or something, I don't want to deal with yet another aggravant to the oppressor, so I'm going to clamp down on my kids because I want them to fit in when they're already not going to fit in. You know what I mean? So it's just horrific. What would you recommend to young parents today?
I would just say pick your battles in the way that is comfortable, that you have energy for, and that if your kid feels strongly, they will keep pushing back.
What about gender reveal?
I mean, I don't know why it's become so popular. I mean, so many things are about individually celebrating ourselves now. I would say you don't have to do a gender reveal party. If you want to gather with your friends and talk about being a new parent, talk about pregnancy, that would be lovely. If it's an excuse to get together with your friends and family, that's great. But please don't feel pressure to do a gender reveal party. It's a real weird new phenomenon that maybe will fade out over time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember in the 70s what it was like regarding gender and babies and pregnancies?
Baby alive? Yeah. I mean, it's all real familiar. What aspect are you talking about?
Well, because I'm trying to remember exactly the way that it was for my younger brother, who's 7 years younger than me. And from my memory, I don't think sonography was automatically done.
No. I mean, you knew a lot less about your baby until they could tell the sex, but yeah, we didn't have sonograms or any of that. They
could tell the sex from
the urine.
The urine. Oh.
The mother's urine or the gestational parent's urine. That's how they tell boy or girl.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Huh. I seem to I'd have to ask my mom, but I seem to remember that. Well, either way, it wasn't a big deal until birth. Of course, my parents didn't have a party regarding gender. It was just like, she's pregnant again for the fourth time. and then, once the kid is born, I guess there would be, is it a boy or a girl? That would be a thing. But there certainly wasn't paraphernalia like clothing or trinkets or hats or there wasn't any of that.
Right, we had so much less information about what would happen in somebody's future.
But also, just even after the child is born, there was just
so much less stuff too. Yeah. I mean, that the fourth sibling in that family got the clothes from the first sibling. Right. Like there was
half my clothes were hand-me-downs from my sister.
Yeah.
And occasionally people thought I was a girl when I was 3 years old, and I didn't care because I liked that striped shirt. And so there was just so much it's weird to think that today, although a lot of social justice has been infused into our society regarding gender, it's almost like we're more gender obsessed regarding cisgender and
and more consumer obsessed.
Right.
I mean, how much money is spent on these parties and they self-propagate each other.
Right.
But, we don't ever kind of ask, why are we doing that? And I've never been to a gender reveal party. They're not very popular in the queer community. And in Jewish culture, you don't even do a baby shower. You don't do anything to celebrate the baby until the baby arrives, because there's so much superstition about what can happen. And I think in a way that's really smart, because tons of stuff goes wrong.
And that's the way, I mean, I'm not saying it's the way it should be, but that's what I remember. I think my parents told me that there was a baby shower for my oldest brother, but after that, there wasn't any party or any kind of gifts or any sort of celebration or any sort of fanfare, certainly not any sort of products.
Well, and you sent me the possible questions for today, and one of them was about pregnancy loss. And
Well, do you want to read that one?
Yeah, because I think it dovetails.
Well, let's take a break first, and then we'll get to that. All right, we're back from the break. And by the way, I just want to point out that the forest fire issue, it's not as if gender reveal parties are
the number one cause of forest fires.
There's many forest fires that are caused by campers and hikers, and we wouldn't say that we want to shut down all camping and all hiking. There's plenty of gender reveal parties, particularly after the fires, that are being safe and whatnot. So I'm not saying that it's some sort of rampant problem. But yeah, so...
But it does speak to the one-upmanship. I mean, I see this with my clients who are planning weddings, all kinds of things now. That everything has to be so special and so unique.
Yeah, the first time I noticed this was in the aughts, when all these videos are going around of couples dancing at their wedding with choreographed dances. I remember it was like every month it just got one-upped online. And I remember I saw a video and thought, oh, that's cute. That I think there was a really famous one where even the bridesmaids, the groomsmen were also dancing. Everyone had like a specific dance or something. And this is early days of YouTube or online videos. And today it would be like the algorithm would not pick up this video. But back then it was this really cute thing. And I remember everyone was watching it and thinking, oh, that's really funny. And then, of course, everyone that sees that who's planning a wedding or will plan a wedding is like, okay, well, what can we do along those lines? Because, we want to make it the most special day of all time, which means we're competing with all the specialness of everyone else's specialness. And so every year there'd be like a more elaborate dance. And before long, you had people doing like full-on professional choreographed dances that they had been preparing for 7 months. People that cannot dance. I mean, friends of mine, and that's part of the charm, of course. And, maybe it's all worth it, God bless, but you just wonder about the emphasis and the priorities of everybody regarding how much energy and time they spend on something. I wonder if that is so. Dear listener, email in or comment below. Was it all worth it? We're all, because if you did you're probably younger than us. We're just old people shakes fists at.
Why must it be this way with the young people?
Yeah, because maybe it's all worth it. Maybe it's like I'm glad I spent all that time.
But I think about like prom, asking someone out to the prom now. It needs to be a whole thing. Or how many photo shoots I've seen of people's, the engagement. Like, wow, you got a photographer there. Wow, everything has to be very, very planned these days. And it's just super fascinating to me.
Yeah, and on one hand, I'm worried that people feel pressure to make it more special based on competition, and they're orienting their lives, even in this very special moment, to the outside world rather than to the couple or their family or themselves. I don't know if that's happening, but I worry about that. On the other hand, the American cultural experiment was to be a melting pot, as they say, which meant assimilate and reject prior cultural mechanisms, some of which were very important for thousands of years, and many of those mechanisms were ceremonies and belief systems. And the shedding of those were not replaced with much. And so we were left without any protocol or guide or meaning-making experience. Like with death, that whole thing was just thrown out. Other cultures have, of course, very rich, long-standing protocols and ceremonies and meaning-making events regarding death. And for us as Americans, we just gave it up entirely. Just like, we don't have anything, we gotta, because that's a very culturally identifying ceremony, that the melting pot and the mandate of assimilation dictated we get rid of it. And so I'm actually very pro introducing ceremony and meaning making. But I don't know. But then you add the materialism aspect into it, and the marketing and the influencing, the internet aspect, and I just hope that people are creating meaning and importance and demarcating the before the ceremony and after the ceremony, and that it benefits them and enriches them in spite of the distractions of materialism and competing with the Joneses on TikTok. But I don't know. I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from folks.
Yeah. So up to your patron, Nancy, she says, "Hi, Dr. Honda and team. Recently, I have been going through a very difficult time in my life because I had to terminate a very much wanted pregnancy. My baby had a terminal diagnosis. So about 2 months ago, I had to terminate my pregnancy at 14 weeks and 1 day, which is early second trimester. I'd love it if you could make an episode about this topic. Oftentimes, we forget about terminations for medical reasons within the abortion debate. I'm lucky enough to live in Canada, so I was not enduring this in the midst of the Roe v. Wade situation. My heart goes out to the women in the United States." Rebecca, what do you think?
I was so touched when I read this email. Thank God that this person had access to medical care, that they didn't have to carry this pregnancy. And 1 in 3 pregnancies naturally ends in pregnancy loss. It is so complicated, the biological aspects that it takes to bring a baby to full term, and that it's not really talked about how often pregnancy is about pregnancy loss. This person has every right to be devastated. And in some states, they're now going to offer pregnancy loss leave, so that people really have the time to grieve. Because, there's the emotional factor, and then there's the whole physical factor that your body goes through. It takes a while to become, like, quote, unpregnant, as all of the hormones leave your body. And that's its whole own and very intense physical process. And then obviously all of the emotional hopes and dreams, and, I can only imagine what they're going through. And, how long were they trying to get pregnant? There's all kinds of things.
And the lack of support. I mean, Getting back to the gender reveal thing, there are elaborate systems of gender reveal or baby showers or post-birth celebrations and pictures, and there isn't a single thing for someone in this situation. It's all just denied and shamed and misunderstood.
And the self-blame. I mean, most of the clients that I have had who've addressed this run through, like, is it something that I did? Did I not take enough potassium or whatever?
Totally. It's not uncommon for a couple pre-conception, through pregnancy, through early, post-birth, to have multiple blood tests and multiple supplements and multiple check-ins, and that's good, of course. Medical care, it's incredibly important, but I think that it might go too far sometimes, where people feel like they have power over things that they have no power over. Yeah. I have a friend that works in high-risk pregnancies, and she's a medical professional, and she's often, as a radiologist type of person, she's one of the very first people that knows that people's unborn baby is either dead or dying or never going to live or maybe even suffering in utero. And she tells me about these experiences where the families will come in because they think of imaging as this, precursor to gender reveal, and it is. It's a very wonderful experience for families to be able to see the unborn child and to look at the nose and the fingers and see the heartbeat. But what my friend will say is they don't understand that if they're being referred to me, especially, but even if they're not, it's not always fun and games. There's a chance that so until you get the okay from me and the other docs, don't assume that everything's going to be great, because no one talks about those other kinds of moments. It's all swept under the rug. And then she has to tell the family, and it's really, really emotionally hard for her. And then she has to go to the next appointment, and she has this all day long for her, because it's risk pregnancies all day long, NICU babies and da-da-da. It's a very hard job, and it's just not talked about. People just sweep it under the rug. So to have a patron that went through this, it's hard enough as it is, but just imagine the isolation.
Yeah, and that's why pregnancy loss support groups are so important. I would hope that your provider had offered you one, but if not, there are tons online. But really gathering together and having conversations with people that are going through the same thing and understand the level of isolation and grief that you're experiencing. Because you're right, there's no, you don't get to stand up at work and say, I had to have a medically induced abortion because my baby was unviable, right? There's no room in our society to talk about it.
And God knows what sort of political fuckitude is happening around you, someone, because there are people and politicians and states in our union that don't even allow physicians and families to have these kind of procedures. It's illegal for them to terminate a pregnancy that is bad for everybody, including the unborn child. For those families, they, in some of those states, cannot terminate the child, even though it is 1,000,000,000% obvious that it is almost cruel and unusual to put the parent and the child, the unborn child, through the next number of weeks to have whatever occurs. It's barbaric. It's awful. I'm just glad I live in Washington State,
Yeah, and I think to know that childbearing age people have been addressing this through century, from time immemorial, pregnancies have not gone well.
Yeah. And what I say to people in other states is mobilize, as they have in
what just happened.
Ohio, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where if you say to your neighbor, hey, do you want your other neighbors tortured through something awful, or would you like them to have the choice to end something awful as soon as possible?
Yeah. Another email from patron Corne from the Netherlands. He says, Rebecca often mentions using tarot in therapy. I would love it if she could talk more about that process, how she got into it. So there's a few questions
Can I
here.
grab my deck while
Sure,
you're talking?
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Well, Rebecca is now getting up from the comfy seat that I selected specifically for her. She's going over to my bookcase. So you can buy these online.
Yeah, on Etsy at our text. The deck is called Therapist Who Tarot. I'm about to receive 250 for the Christmas season.
Oh, it's not made on demand. You actually buy the inventory and you personally mail them out.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is like my spiritual practice, is to sit on my floor and print and pack. And
yeah. Do you want to say how many you've sold thus far?
I don't know, 250 probably.
Wow.
Yeah, they sell. It's crazy. I'm very lucky. It's really fun.
I didn't know you had your own Etsy page.
Yeah.
I got to check this out.
I mean, how else am I going to do it?
Etsy.com/rtext. I assume that's the actual URL. Oh, no. That's not the URL.
If you just type in therapist or tarot.
Our
So how did I get
text.
into this? So I got my first tarot reading in my early 20s using the Mother Peace Tarot deck. And I was blown away by what my friend had to say to me. It was not a way in which anyone had ever talked to me before. I think it was, she basically pulled the Eight of Swords card. And her comment was, "You're making your own walls." I was like, oh, what does that mean? And I was into tarot ever since. I would, pick up a deck or pull cards, or there's tons of ways to play around with it online. And then as an art therapist, we use decks of cards a lot to kind of in a projective way. Oracle cards, tarot cards, angel cards. There's all kinds of cards. Self-esteem cards, goddess cards. So they were always kind of around, and there are many, many artists, Salvador Dali being one of the most famous, who have produced their own deck. So as an artist, it's kind of a challenge to see if you can do it. It took me 3 years, was probably 400 paintings for 78 completed paintings.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You've yet to give me the painting for my hallway.
Oh, right. Got to get on that. I've picked it out. I just totally forgot.
It's okay.
So what I am doing, and there's tons of ways that people do this, but for me, I'm just using the tarot card as a projective experience. So I'm just going to pull a card today from my own deck to see what comes up, and then we can talk about it.
So what, is it just ad lib, or is there a question in mind, or a...
Today, I'm just going to pull a card to see what happens. But often people are like, what should I do next? Questions about career or love. I mean, what's interesting about tarot is there's 78 cards in here that represent 78 different human experiences. This deck is, the images in here are 400 years old. They cross the human experience across time. So there's no card in here that you could pull for me, and what I've seen with my clients, where someone would say, that doesn't make any sense to me. These are all, if I were to say to you, hey, there's a packet of 78 experiences that most humans can relate to, most therapists would be like, oh, great. Like, I'd like to use that packet. The fact that it's called tarot and has certain meanings to it, people tend to be like, whoa, that's crazy magic making. That's too much. But really, if you're just thinking about, if you could boil the human experience down to 78 concepts that do well in therapy, wouldn't that be a fun way to connect with your clients? The card I picked today, which is Judgment, which is in the Major Arcana, which is about awakening. So if I were in a therapy session and I pulled this card, the question I would ask would be, are you ready for the message that's being brought to you? A lot of times in therapy, clients are getting the same message over and over again and are like, nope, I don't want to hear it. And can be powerful to say, okay, I'm ready. I hear you, world, saying the same thing to me over and over again. I'm finally watching the Indian Matchmaker show on Netflix. Have you done an episode on it yet?
No, I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay, I would love to do it on it. But actually, in season 1, they use an astrologer a couple of times. But there's this one woman who's really stuck and hates all the matches that are brought to her. So the matchmaker has her see an astrologer. And everyone is saying to this woman, you're too picky. You have to be more open. And so that's the judgment that's coming down. She has to change. And she's saying in the first couple episodes, I won't change, I won't change, I won't change. And finally she realizes, like, oh, I have to change. So, if I were to think about what is my awakening right now, it is definitely, I'm about to turn 53. It's being in a 53-year-old body and having to make all kinds of decisions. Am I going to go on hormone replacement therapy?
Is that seriously a thought?
Yeah. How am I going to, we've been talking about my cholesterol is through the roof, my blood pressure's through the roof. So my body is changing, and so there's a thing for folks who are going through menopause. It's like, do you hit each problem individually?
What word do I get? I don't get menopause.
You're just an aging old fart. So
Fartism.
You have old man fartism. So, or do I just try the blanket? Do I just try hormone replacement therapy and see if I can hit everything with one gun? Yeah. So that is my awakening right now. It's to my aging body. And then this deck.
I mean, you're younger than I am. I turned 53 exactly 3 weeks before you do. So
you've got to, yeah.
I'll tell you what menopause is like.
So the Therapist Who Tarot deck is unique. This was an idea from Sally from Cascadia, where she said, as a teaching tool, because I teach these workshops where people make their own tarot cards. We had a great listener in our workshop the last time. It was so fun. I was like, how did you hear about this workshop? She's like, I listened to the podcast. And I was like, oh
really?
my God, welcome.
So tell people about how they can find out about your...
So I'm on CascadiaTrainings.com. You can type in my name and all my workshops for the coming year. So I taught that workshop for about 2 years. And Sally said to me, you need a teaching tool that's got tarot cards on your images on the front, and then on the back, because usually tarot card, just like the back of a playing card deck, all the cards are the same on the back. She said you should have some questions that someone could ask, journaling prompts, or if they're in the session, the therapist could ask the client. And she sent me home with that assignment, and I sat at my computer and cried for like a month. I came up with like 2 questions. And then I wrote my friend, Drea Bloom, who I teach workshops.
Cried because of writer's block?
I couldn't, writer's block completely. Like, I don't think this way. I don't think that way. I don't think like, look at this image or think about this concept and come up with 3 questions. That's not how my brain works at all.
It seems pretty open-ended.
Yeah. So I called Drea and I was like, Drea, I have this assignment. We could make some dollars. We could have a cool teaching tool. How long would it take you to come up with 78 3-question sets for each tarot card? And she was like, I don't know, 2 hours. Because she's written like 6 books on the subject. So she made this great document that had all the questions. And then I sent them to Shuffle Inc. God bless you, in Florida, who produced the new deck for me. So I'm looking at the judgment card on the front, and it says my little keyword, awakening. And when I flip over the card, it has 3 questions to think about that are what Drea thinks about when she thinks about this card. Question number 1 is, what is limiting your growth? Number 2 is, how are you keeping yourself small? And question number 3 is, in what area of your life do you feel trapped? Really interesting questions. Do you want to answer any of those?
Myself. What is limiting my growth? What's limiting? Probably workaholism, anxiety. Being self-employed, as you know.
Ugh.
But being, when
it's
I was
both great and it's terrifying.
But being in private practice, especially over time, you start to feel kind of comfortable with your client load, and especially with your word of mouth, like you're probably turning clients away. So the worries are far less in terms of like the ebbs and flows of income, whereas one could call me literally an influencer and or at the very least, an internet content provider, and the ebbs and flows are pretty wide. The good times versus the bad times, there's a huge difference. And, if things really take a downturn, let's just put it this way, on a daily basis, I have flash thoughts of like how I would pay my bills and my family's bills. And I think, okay, well, I'd have to expand my practice greatly. I guess I'd go back to work at the university. I would have to shut down 98% of the podcast because I wouldn't have time for it anymore. We're nowhere near that, dear listener, but that worry is probably overblown in my head, and thus I spend too much time working, and thus I don't have any time for growth. You could argue part of my growth is enjoying myself sometimes and taking
a break.
And typical work days are 10 to 16 hours a day. The last day I didn't work was in August. and it was one day. Oh, early August, though, I had like a full week. But then I got COVID halfway through it. So that was fantastic.
Did you work through COVID?
I couldn't work through
Okay.
COVID. That I could only stare into the darkness. Anyway,
So let me say this to you. So we have an exciting adventure coming up.
we're going to sumo wrestling.
We're going to sumo wrestling on a Saturday. Can you do nothing before that? And we just have a fun, and you'll show up and we'll have lunch and then we'll have a fun activity together. Can you not work that Saturday?
Oh, well, I can commit to not working that day.
Okay.
But also Apple Cup, there's a big football game that day.
So we're not having lunch before the
Well, we're meeting
Assuming-
up at a restaurant
right at 3.
that will have the game on the TV.
Now it all becomes clear.
I mean-
crystal clear.
Hey, you know,
Multitasking.
It's my alma
I
mater.
know. I'm not. Now I just know. It wasn't painted that way. We'll be going.
No,
to
I didn't know. They didn't know when Apple Cup was
Okay.
going to be, but
Okay.
two birds with one stone.
Exactly. And here in Washington State, you can't fault anyone for their Apple Cup plans.
Yeah,
It
Apple Cup
is-
is between the two big state schools, University of Washington and Washington State University. It's been a long time, sort of a rivalry for over 100 years. And my alma mater, which is the state school in Seattle, if we win this game, we will have gone undefeated this season.
Having an amazing season.
Which hasn't happened in a very long time. We could be heading to a national championship, maybe. So this game is a big fucking deal. And half my family went to Washington State University.
Oh.
So
A house divided.
that's right.
Nothing's better than a house divided.
That's right.
I find these rivalries delightful.
And frankly, most of my friends went to Wazoo.
Oh, really?
Went to Washington State, yeah. Like of my friends in high school, 80 to 90% of them went to Washington State.
Well, and here's a random fact. I've lived in Washington State since 1986. Watching this game with you will be the first time I've watched any part of an Apple Cup.
Oh, okay.
So I look forward to my inaugural Apple Cup being with you.
Well, hopefully by the time we meet up, there's a huge lead and I can just relax. But if things are going poorly, and if we lose, I'm going to jump on that stage with the sumo and I'm going to take my aggression out.
That's going to be brutal. So these are actual sumo wrestlers from Japan,
Yeah.
800 to 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
This is a West Coast tour that they have been on. I've wanted to do this for years. And so talk about my ways that I felt trapped in my life. Then I am trying to live my life to the fullest at this point. I'm trying to do as much fun stuff. I'm trying to move away from consumerism, which if you know me is a joke because I buy so many clothes. But
You do?
I do.
I don't. Have we talked about this?
No.
Like
I would say my hobby is buying used clothes and reselling the ones that don't work. And there are a couple of resellers in Seattle. There's a store in South Seattle called Gather, and she calls me one of her primary. Like, I can call her anytime and be like, I have clothes. She could be full, and she's like, Rebecca, come in. All your stuff is always good. I mean, she won't take everything that I bring in, but like,
you buy it online or something?
I buy it online. I buy things on sale. I buy things for myself. I only wear it once. I resell it. I give a lot away. Like, I have a whole.
Is that a problem?
It can be a little bit of a problem.
How so?
But it is, it's a hobby that costs money, but I also pay back. It's definitely my hobby. I just have to admit it that at this point in my life, buying and reselling used clothes is
And
my
wearing
hobby.
them once?
Yeah. A lot of clothes I wear over and over and over again, but
What kind of clothes do you look for?
clothes that fit my body.
Yeah.
Which I'm realizing a lot of women have my body and can't find clothes that fit their bodies. And so I collect clothes that fit an apple-shaped body. And then they are popular at resale stores because so many women are like, oh my God, this shirt actually fits me. It is, I would
Have you always
love-
been this way?
It's gotten more intense as I've gotten older.
Huh.
I've just had to admit that it's a hobby, and not instead of calling it an addiction, I call it a hobby.
Yeah.
But I'm good at it.
I mean, as far as like costly or time consuming or problematic hobbies go, it's probably pretty low key.
Yeah, and I like the people that I meet. I love these women that run these resale stores. It is my hobby to go and chat with them seasonally and bring in the clothes that I bought. And we all talk about clothes. I mean, for many American women, this is their hobby. So it's, there's a whole own world in it. But I am good at spotting deals online and reselling them here in town. Yeah, it's a random ass hobby. But so how did we even get on this subject?
I think were you talking about your growth or
Oh,
something?
my growth. Yeah, I'd like to be a little less in my hobby and use that money to do experiences. So going to sumo wrestling is part of that. I'm also going to go to the zoo lights for the first time. So the zoo in town fills its walkways with light shows, and I'm doing that.
Woodland Park or I mean, I know they do it at Point Defiance.
Yeah, Woodland Park.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing that the night before. So I'm just trying to do some really fun stuff.
Well, let's take a break.
Okay.
Get back. More
All right.
emails. What do you say?
Okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
All right, you're back from the bathroom. How'd things go?
I don't know what I ate. I'm not at my best, but here I am.
All right, let's do an OPP. These people became patrons all the way back in 2021 and have stayed patrons ever since.
God bless them.
We have annual patron Haley from Reno, annual patron Samantha from Tacoma, Washington, annual patron Lynn from Twinsburg, Ohio. And the following folks are annual patrons from God knows where. We have Isanita, Anya, Christine, Hawat, Glycerin, and Shelley. And we also have annual upper or middle tier patron Emma from Austin, Texas.
Shout out to Austin.
Annual middle tier patron Venatius from BR. What do you think? Any guesses?
British Republic.
BR is Brazil, of course.
Brazil.
That's obvious. Annual middle tier patron Angela from Jacksonville, Florida, and Jules and Claire. I think I've interacted with the two of you. Annual middle tier patrons from Jeffersonville, Indiana. Thank you so much for
thank you.
becoming
Allows
a
us
patron.
to do this ridiculous community service that we provide.
Is that what this is?
I don't know.
So the next,
Is this entertainment? What is this?
yeah, entertainment, public service, narcissistic,
Chatting.
yeah,
Chatting with a really old friend about who knows what.
right. Anonymous patron. She says, "I was just listening to the episode about Rebecca's mom passing away. My condolences to you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
During the episode, I heard your understandable concern about the seemingly casual about. I heard your understandable concern about the seemingly casual way the generalist, the physician, seemed to give Rebecca power of attorney over her mom. What were you?
So we're coming up on this anniversary, and I was wondering if we would do a podcast about everything that's happened in the last year. But so on December 27th of last year, my mom had been in the hospital for 2 days and been combative with the nurses the whole time. And I had been in communication with the nurses, but not a doctor. And I got a call from a doctor who said, "What is going on here?" And I said, "Well, she's refusing hospice care." And he said, "Well, we can make hospice care happen. Do you have power of attorney?" Remember, I'm completely freaked out, and this is the way I remember the conversation happening. God knows what actually happened in the conversation. And he said, "I can get power of attorney documents over to you." And pretty soon they were faxing back and forth documents, and I was then making my mother's medical decisions.
And when you were telling this story closer to this event, I think we recorded the podcast in like February-ish, and you were apparently, according to this anonymous patron, thinking how odd it was that you were given power of attorney so quickly?
It just seemed really fast, and I've never had an issue around elder care connected to this, but in Washington State, if for your mental health services not to be under your power, a third party comes out and assesses you, an MHP, a mental health professional. And so I had assumed that like a third party needed to come in, either another doctor or something. And I've read this email. The patron is saying he might have already been consulting with other doctors. that it doesn't just happen that a single doctor gets to make this choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember asking the doctor, like, do we need a geriatric psych eval for her to lose her power of attorney over her own healthcare decisions? And in my memory, he was like, no, I can do that for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I also couldn't see her and had no video of her. And I'm assuming now when I think back, she was in really bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably knew she didn't have long to live.
Mm-hmm.
Because she died 2 days later
Mm-hmm.
after she was put on what I would consider appropriate pain care medication for the amount of distress that she was in.
Mm-hmm. And she was, prior to you authorizing that, after getting power of attorney, she was refusing treatment along those lines.
Yeah, she only wanted cancer treatments like chemo and things like that, which were too difficult for her body to process. I mean, her diabetes was raging out of control. She had cancer in 7 different places in her body. She was already 81 at that point. So, and I guess she had a raging infection in her mouth where the cancer surgery had been a year before. So not in good shape.
So in the moment, since you weren't there and didn't see video, to you just thought, wow, it seems flippant that you would just tell me over the phone that you would give me power of attorney. It sounds alarming that could just happen to anybody.
Yeah. I mean, also, we don't talk about death and dying in our culture. So I don't know. Is this the way it is in a hospital? I've never been in this situation before.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are abuses at times, but in all likelihood, the physician was pulling together a lot of wisdom and not downloading that to you and was just...
And probably for the best at the time. I mean, I'm sure they knew I was, I'm sure they...
But it seems like there could be something that he could have said, like, so I could give you a full rundown of where I'm coming from at this point, but suffice it to say that I predict very soon she is going to pass regardless of what we do.
Right.
And
do we want her to do that painfully or not in pain?
And unless I take power of attorney away from her and give it to someone who will authorize care that is rational and best for her, she is going to...
And for the safety of the medical staff. I mean, she was combative to nurses.
Like physically?
Physically.
Yeah. So in all likelihood, he was pulling together a lot of data that had been gathered over a long period of time and his own clinical wisdom around this. But you're saying it's a good thing that he didn't tell you anything along those lines?
I'm saying I probably couldn't have heard it. I mean, also in our modern medical system, he probably had 10 or 15 minutes to make this call.
Right.
So he didn't have the time to give me a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, he probably was like the only, I mean, I hadn't heard from a doctor in 2 days. She'd been in the hospital for 2 days before a doctor called. That's not a sign of a healthy medical system, right? That's the sign of a stressed medical system. Mm-hmm. And I've been to the hospitals in Florida. No offense, everyone's working real hard, but it was clear that staffing was very, very short. So yeah, he probably didn't have a ton of time, and there was nothing wrong with his bedside manner. He did great, I think. And I'm also coming from the perspective of having been a mental health professional in Washington State all this time, where getting anyone's rights taken away from them is a huge deal and not easy to do. And I've never did end of life stuff before. I don't, maybe this is just how things move. They can probably tell things that we can't tell.
Well, I guess optimally what would happen in a situation like that is that there would be a mentally competent adult who was there every day, visiting and seeing the progression, talking to the medical professionals and the patient of concern, and gathering all that information and making choices or working with the team. Whereas for you, you have had and still do, a complicated relationship with your mom. And since you were I'm trying to remember all the details, but since
I have power. I have medical power of attorney.
you're the only child.
I'm the only child.
So
I'm the next of kin. She doesn't have a partner.
And you weren't.
She has a partner, but they're not married, so he can't make medical decisions for her.
Okay. And he wasn't super involved in this end of
He
life?
was 94.
Okay.
And he passed away 3 months after she did. I don't know if we've talked about that.
I think we did. And you're 5,000 miles away.
There's an ice storm. No one can get anywhere.
And you're working all the time, and you have other things to deal with. And like I said, you had a complicated relationship with your mom. And so you're the next person. And so that's not optimal. So the physician might be used to speaking with someone that's more materially there all the time, and wouldn't have to start from the beginning of explaining like where they're at, you know?
Well, and I think in the way that I probably a real tipping factor that he didn't know was that she had been advised by her doctor to go on hospice and was refusing. I mean, in my memory of it, that changed the whole conversation. Where he was like, oh, this should already probably be going in the direction that he thinks it should be going, and is curious why it's not going. And I can say, yes, it should be going in that way. Medical professionals are already asking her to take that path, and she's refusing.
Yeah. So the anonymous patron has some details that are along these lines. Let's see. She says, as an internist who exclusively practices hospital-based medicine, I thought I might be able to shed some light on how the power of attorney activation might have come about. The laws probably vary by state, but in Michigan, 2 physicians are required to independently evaluate a patient to determine whether they lack capacity. As a physician, I am often engaged in assessing patients' capacities for decision-making related to their health. During this process, I assess the patient's understanding, insight, reason, and ability to communicate a choice. If I determine they lack capacity, I consult a second physician to do a separate assessment. If they agree that the patient is incapacitated, then the patient's healthcare power of attorney is activated to make decisions for the patient. It's possible the generalist caring for Rebecca's mom may already have assessed capacity in a similar way, but did not communicate that clearly to her. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically, I think, the way you thought it was. And I'm just curious if it ever, I'm sure it does, just on, bell curve of experiences, if it ever gets abused.
It must.
Yeah.
But also, it's one of those things, like people argue with me all the time when I say, hey, I'm seeing something. And people are like, hey, you're not seeing that. But it's because I've seen scenarios so many times close to what I'm seeing that I can make an educated guess.
Right. Meaning that as a therapist, you'll tell people.
Yeah. I mean, this happens actually with domestic violence, where I can say to somebody, like, you're in imminent danger. And they're like, no, I'm not. Everything's fine. And then they'll come in the next session and be like, whoa, things really escalated. How did you know that? And I'll say, I mean, it's kind of a law of averages thing. I've seen this scenario before that tends to go this X way. Right. So I'm going to guess that the doctor, and this is with almost a year of distance on it, the doctor could guess which way things were going. Now,
I will say one of the only times I've ever been in this situation is with a parallel profession of a veterinarian. Mm-hmm. I brought my cat in to the vet, and my normal vet wasn't there, so they had a substitute vet, and he evaluated my cat and came back without my cat. I'm in that little exam room. The vet comes in without my cat. It's kind of an important detail, and says that essentially, very bluntly, tells me that my cat is definitely going to die within the next few weeks, and that I should euthanize. I should authorize euthanization. And I said, "Oh, that that's pretty rough. That I was sad, and it was hard to hear." And then I said, "Well, okay, well, I'll let you know, or something like that. And he said, oh no, I thought we should do it right now.
Oh boy.
And just that, that thought of like, wait, so you weren't even going to let me say goodbye to my cat? You were just going to keep my cat, you're going to keep him back there and just, what? And there was something about the whole thing. I was just essentially like, give me my cat, I'm leaving. Like, give me my fucking cat. Like, you angel of death, you know? He gave me the cat, and then I revisited the issue with my regular vet, and we decided to do one last bout of treatment, and my cat lived for another 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
So there are times when clinical wisdom doesn't necessarily result in the right choice, which is pretty dire when it comes to this sort of thing, you know? I'm guessing that in, you know, human medicine, the decision is a lot less flippant, but my cats are very important to me. And so,
Kirk's bathroom is full of pictures of his old cats.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering.
yeah. One more email.
Okay.
Highest tier annual patron Marissa from Albuquerque. She says, my sister and I experienced very bad parenting as children, and now my sister is pregnant. My partner and I have been thinking about having a baby soon as well. I'm scared that us children grow. I'm scared that our children grow. We will. There's a weird.
They're afraid they're going to repeat the patterns of their parents.
What do you think, Rebecca?
So I also had a really, really bad mom. And it was actually about a year ago that you said to me, we were having latkes at my house, and you turned to me and you said that when you saw me with my kid, you knew that the pattern of narcissistic abuse had ended in my family line. And that was so profound to me. The idea that I could do the work, go to therapy, and read about parenting, and be present with my feelings, and I, in a generation, could change that dynamic of narcissism. And now I say it to my clients, and they tear up. So it is possible. You don't have to repeat the patterns of your parents. Of course, I hear my mother's voice come out of me. Am I a perfect parent? No. Do I mess up 50% of the times? Yes. What I do differently than my mom did with me is that I remember to repair with my child and come back and say, oh my God, I made a mistake. Or do we need to keep having a conversation about this in an age appropriate way? But yeah, we don't have to perpetuate those patterns. It's not inherent. It is work. Will parenting push you in ways that you never imagined possible? Will you be more exhausted than you realize half of all societies are being run by sleep-deprived parents? Yes. But you can also raise a really healthy, functioning child.
Did you worry before you had kids?
Oh, yeah. Completely. I mean, I worried I was a ticking time bomb. I worried I was a ticking time bomb of childhood sexual abuse. I mean, I had all kinds of fears.
Meaning that you would abuse?
Sure, that it was lying in me dormant as some kind of evilness. Or that it had been so permeated in my childhood that I would just not even realize it.
Like you would do things to kids and not even frame it as abuse in your head?
It was murkier and slippier than that. But, and then you're in those situations and you're like, oh, that's what's freaky. So you're like, oh my God, that adult made this really conscious choice that's so clearly wrong in this moment when you're hanging out with this totally innocent being that needs you for everything.
How did you know? I mean, you must have, when Eli was young, you must have earlier on, I mean, maybe you didn't suspect that you weren't damaging your child in the way you were damaged.
Well, I definitely saw it in their development. They made friends and kept hobbies and did okay in school and
Seemed happy?
They seemed happy enough. And when things went wrong, they told us. They didn't have to hide that things were wrong because we were stable enough to have room for them to help them with their problems.
What measures did you take to better your parenting?
I was in therapy on and off the entire time. I was in a parenting support group that met.
Did you have humility?
I sure did. I asked for help. I asked questions. I got babysitting if I could afford it when I needed it. I took breaks. When Eli was 4, I took my first trip away from them for a few days. I got punished horribly by them when I got back. They were so mad. But, I had community, which is something that my mom really couldn't manage. That's huge. You cannot do this alone. You need more community than you could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. And I had other people in my life who were good enough parents. And I turned to them all the time and asked questions and cried to them, and they cried to me. And they taught me really fun tricks. Like, I don't think it's as big a deal now, but when Eli was little, every toy had a sound card in it and played a song and had flashing lights.
I imagine it's similar.
And the woman who I love, Shelley Bates, down the street, she had 3 kids. One of the earliest things she said to me is, you can just put a piece of duct tape over that speaker. That's the sound, by 9/10. And that saved my life. Those little tips.
Yeah.
Or when somebody told me that cradle cap is really dandruff. There's all these euphemisms for babies that make things sound cute and you don't understand what's happening. And then someone will just tell you what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Like butt pudding or something.
So you just really know isolation is a huge part of abuse in families. Mm. And
so you stayed in connection. You stayed in therapy.
Built connections.
You fought yourself, because we all have to remain humble. Mm-hmm.
I admitted when I made mistakes.
You're flexible. You had mechanisms to receive feedback, not only from Eli, but from people around you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When, or was there a moment where, because I feel well,
I know the question.
No, you don't. I don't think this is a weird question. I can't imagine. Okay. What question do you think I was going to ask?
I think you're going to ask, when did I know Eli was okay?
No, it's a really different question. I think with all parents, we enter through into a time of complacency, and however long it takes, months, maybe years, and kind of as therapists too, where with a particular client, where we suddenly realize we've been coasting in a suboptimal system or way of thinking or vibe or something. So did that ever happen with Eli?
So I was raising a twice exceptional child, a child who's had a high IQ, whatever that means if you believe in that system, and was severely ADHD. So I never got to coast. There was never a relaxed time in my parenting. It was always incredibly active.
Well, not coast like everything's fine,
no,
but a mindset where you just lock in on something and establish that must be the best way. And you work to get there, but you stopped iterating on the model. Did that ever happen to you?
Not with a kid. I mean, you hear this with kids that are so far out of the bell curve. I never had that. I see that in other families.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
And I don't know exactly what happened with Eli, but did a number of things happen, like calls from the school and challenging episodes at home and a need to constantly look at your parenting to optimize everything? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I see.
Many, many professionals involved. A lot of work. I once had a friend visit with twins. Eli and Beth were out of town. She's got twins 1 year younger than me. 1 year younger than Eli. She was apologizing that her kids were so loud and so disruptive. And I had to laugh and say that your 2 children are half of my 1 child. It is, we are living in different planes of existence. Yeah. Nothing has broken in the last 12 hours. I also had a kid who grew 6 inches in 1 year. So many things broke that year just because their wingspan was so big that like things were lamps, glasses, vases, cereal boxes. Like there was, most people, it's like, you hit 13, 14, things are stressful for a different reason. In my house, they were stressful because like shit was just flying constantly. There was like a cleanup and then they're sobbing because once again, they've knocked something over and they don't even know. They were like, I didn't even mean to. So like, there was just this constant level of chaos that I just know from talking to other parents. And people will say this all the time, like your kid wasn't special. And it was like, they may not have been special, but they were more exhausting than your kid. And I have tons of incidental evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. People often don't really understand what true, or at least the typical presentation of ADHD in children actually is. They tend to think of it as just highly active, maybe a little talkative, a little distracted. And when you actually see full-blown ADHD in the flesh at home, it's a sight to see. That's why it's in the DSM.
Yeah.
It's not just like active or a little rowdy.
It's challenging. I don't know. Did I ever tell you the story of the person that was babysitting Eli and their kid and they lost Eli in their house?
How big was the house?
It was big. But I came home and she was in tears and she's like, I don't know how you do it every day. And like Eli's like 2 at this point.
Yeah.
And she was like, I feel so bad. I lost your kid in my house. And I'm like, this to me is normal. I'm not at all. I don't blame you at all.
My God, really?
Yeah.
So you arrive.
Yes.
The babysitter says, I don't know where they are.
She had found them by then, but she was so traumatized. She had a child the same age.
Oh, I see.
But was so traumatized that like there was something deficient in her. And I was explaining.
Still, the fact that you arrive at the babysitter's house, the babysitter reports, I lost your child for a time. And you say, I hear you.
So I say, where...
Was it only once, you might have said?
I say, where was Eli when you found them? Just because I'm curious, just because it's always interesting. And she said that he had climbed the mantle and was hiding on top of the mantle.
Oh my God. Wait, in plain view?
Yeah, but was being so quiet and sneaky. And
that the babysitter just thought it was a vase?
Because these children are small, so she's looking down. Doesn't cross her mind to look up. And I was like, oh, there was your problem, honey. Like in my world, we scan all levels because there is no height. This is a child that was climbing mantles. Like,
2 years old, climbed the fireplace.
Yeah. Sitting up there.
And, oh my God.
Sneaky, happy.
How did Eli live?
I asked myself that question.
To adulthood.
Every damn day. The fact that they have chosen a profession where huge pieces of metal are flying around constantly.
Well, they got beamed in the head, 8 months ago or something with something flew off. Eli works on engines and is obsessed with cars and is becoming a master auto repair person. Yeah. And
it's great. It's phenomenal.
And at a young age will be set for a trade and a career that they enjoy. And yet there's some OSHA violations where things explode. But correct me if I'm wrong, Eli was telling me about this and it was their fault, wasn't it?
The story changes over time, but I think someone had put the bolt on too tight. And in trying to get it off, it had just something flew off.
I thought Eli was saying that,
or maybe it was their fault.
They should have. Well, they should have known.
Yeah,
that they were cutting corners that their instructor was saying don't do, and I think Eli was saying
pay the price.
And I learned my lesson.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the other thing to know about parenting is you don't pick the type of kid that you get. And some children are chill and lovely, and some children are high needs. And
I mean, the universe really threw you a curveball there because there are kids that I know of who are some of the most easiest humans on the planet, let alone kids. They just wake up, chill. They go to bed, chill. They eat, chill. They play, chill. They interact, chill. And why didn't the universe grant you with something like that?
I remember this one time I was at the beach, and there was this family with this little girl, a little bit younger than Eli, and they had spread out a blanket and like given her some crayons, and she was coloring in her coloring book sitting at the beach. Meanwhile, Eli has run into the ocean and is like up to their neck, bobbing up and down in the waves.
2 years old or how?
Or maybe 5 at this point. It's like looking at this little girl crying, be like, imagine if you went to the beach and your child wasn't almost dead in the water 3 minutes after arriving.
That must have happened a lot because,
Yes.
most kids are a lot less bolt away from you, if you will.
Yeah.
The way that ADHD kids are.
Yeah. I mean, now whenever I was in the airport recently and there was someone that had their kid on the leash, and I was like, God bless you. I know what it's like to have that kid. Whereas before I had kids, I'd be like, why can't you just hold their hand? And it's like,
Did you ever have a leash?
we did not, but we also didn't travel from when Eli was 18 months to like 3.5 because they were so hard to deal with.
Did they have leashes in the early aughts? I feel
They
like
did.
Oh,
But yeah, for some reason we just stopped traveling because it was too exhausting. We're like, try this again later.
yeah.
People can come to us.
So,
that note.
you, I mean, not only did you, well, final question. Was there a moment when you thought, oop, I actually have been or did the thing I was worried that I would do that was like my mom? Earlier saying you apologize and you work on it, but were there moments like that?
Oh, sure. So many times. So many times that I was like, I just got to check out for like an hour or two.
Right. So it's not that you weren't like your mom. It's what do you do as that happens or after? What do you do in prep for that? So to the, to Marissa, it's like you undoubtedly will act like the bad parents that you had occasionally, but what do you do about it? And I think that that's important because the delusion that anybody could completely diverge from the modeling and the internalizations that they internalized from 0 to 18 is ridiculous. You're going to do it. And so I wonder how many people falsely think, like they get a dog and they notice that they even are toward the dog the way their parents were towards them. And they think, oh, well, if I had kids, all bets are off. I'm doomed. And that's a false conclusion because you are definitely going to start acting like your parents, for better or for worse. It's, do you know it? Mm-hmm. Do you apologize? Do you try to change it? Do you go to therapy? Do you involve community? Do you receive feedback? Do you empower your child to know that they are worth it even though you make mistakes? These are important things. And in that way, very, very abused people can have wonderful kids like Eli, who is the pillar of the next generation. I look at Eli and their partner, and I hugged them both.
You actually said to me, how can I get more time with them?
Yeah.
I was like, I know, I feel the same way. Like watching that younger generation build relationships, if they can do it right, they're so much better at it from the start than we were.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me cry thinking about, because the all the things that a parent would be proud of are present. You have social justice oriented, smart,
caring, so caring for each other,
perceptive, charming as all get out, both of them, and successful, at a young age, way beyond the curve. I would say that they're in a category of 1% of people their age that actually have even begun to even think about a career, and God, I didn't. When I was Eli's age, I had no idea what the fuck I was going to do, and didn't bother to think about it because I was too busy partying at the University of Washington that we were talking about earlier. And so this, your system worked.
Yeah, it's not shame-based, and it's not... So I'm finally going to get fitted for that hearing aid. I'm like 9 months into this process. I don't know if you remember this, that when my mom died that day, my ear erupted into this horrible ear infection, like dripping, oozing. It was insane in like just a few hours. And I looked it up online.
Did it have to do with blood pressure?
No. Well, anyways, the somatic answer, because I was like, what is happening? Like, this is so beyond the beyond. And I had heard of this, that like when somebody dies, like you instantly start vomiting or your back goes out or, there's often a somatic symptom. So I looked it up online and it said, how often were you verbally abused or put down? And I was like, that is some crazy stuff that my body's working that out. That, my mom, her go-to was to put me down. Like everything from if she left a message on my answering machine, the first statement out of her mouth would be, your message is too loud on the machine. Like she just literally had nothing. She couldn't even like couch it with like, hi honey, the volume on my phone seems loud today. Everything was my fault. Everything.
Yeah.
And so I just have to remember, like, I didn't do that to my kid. I didn't constantly blame them for everything I was experiencing.
Yeah. That's like blaming us right now for the volume being too high on the podcast when it's the device volume, not us.
And like any rational person could figure that out. But to my mom,
she was determined.
The fact that she was uncomfortable was clearly my fault. And just imagine every interaction landed like that. Rebecca, this is going wrong and it's because you've done X and you're trying to hurt me. And it was maddening.
Well, self-fulfilling prophecy too.
Yeah. Yeah. So to be with my kid, I mean, we joke about stuff, but mostly, we are still at 19. I feed them and we watch whatever TV show they want to watch. And there's a way that I can attune to them and let them run the show. That is something I never got as a kid.
And that's clear. And the way that Eli acts independent of you and with you, the way that they held themselves throughout the build-up to your mom's passing and afterwards. They were there in Florida going through all this stuff at the house, took ownership of it, were interested in it, and was, processing and there for you. Like I said, when I was their age, I was just focused on going to football games and hanging out with my buddies until 4 a.m. playing basketball. I cared, but not as much as Eli does.
Thank you. God bless a child that has their own, for sure.
So abuse people out there.
You can raise great kids.
Yes, if you want.
If you work, if you engage your community, if you do the work on yourself, if you admit that you've made a mistake, that's like 90% of it is being like, oh boy, I did that wrong. Because that's what didn't happen when you were a kid. No one said, oh wow, I overreacted there. Or hey, I was really high. Or like just whatever needed to get said.
Yeah, my dad apologizes occasionally for things, and it's really sweet when he does. Well, really, both my parents apologize for things, and it breaks my heart because, all parents make mistakes, and they're not apologizing in the way that I would hope they would. The way that I hope they would be to say, we're good parents and we fucked up a couple times. My parents, given what they went through growing up, believe that by default they need to apologize. Do you know what I mean? But I appreciate the apologies, but I also am sad that they don't believe that they're wonderful parents, really. Mm-hmm. Do you know that you're a wonderful parent?
I know I have a wonderful relationship with my kid.
But you can't admit it to yourself?
I mean, that sounds weird. It's
Why?
I don't know.
I'm a wonderful husband.
Okay, I'm a wonderful parent to a great kid. I'm super lucky.
What's the barrier?
I don't know. No one's ever asked me to say that before. Maybe I'll practice, and maybe the next time I see you, I can say it. It's just weird. No one's ever asked me to say that before.
I mean,
I can say I'm a wonderful thrift shopper and a pretty good therapist.
I'm going to take a guess and say you're a better parent than you are a thrift shopper. It's harder.
All right, I'll try it. I'll try it on. I'll try on thinking about that till the next time.
Is it shame, or is it just, or you don't want to brag? You don't.
Yeah, it's like that's a little braggy.
Huh.
I'm a better parent than my mom was. That is easy to say.
Well, that's a low bar. I mean,
that's a low bar.
I mean, when people look at Eli, do they think, "My God, who are their parents? What did they do? How did they get them there?"
There is stuff that happens in public where people are like, "That's a good boy. You raised a good kid."
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like nothing. Or there's like a look I'll get in the grocery store when like Eli's attending to me or helping me. That's like, it means the world to me that like some perfect stranger is being like, "That's a good kid," right there. Like that. Yeah. That's like my litmus test that I've done it right.
Yeah. Are you worried that if you tell yourself you're a wonderful parent that you'll give up? And
no, it's like something I've never thought to say to myself, and it feels vain.
Are you not used to saying nice things to yourself?
I don't know. I need some time on this. Okay. I'm floating.
Really?
Yeah, I just feel kind of shy.
Oh. Overwhelmed?
Yeah.
On
I
the
mean,
spot?
this is going out through the entire universe. Vulnerable. I feel vulnerable.
Okay.
And I don't, and then like it's the culture that we live in, like, and then something will go wrong, and then it'll, well, she was too vain. Look what happened. Like, I don't know. It just feels weird.
Fuck them.
Yeah. Yeah, let's start a good parent.
A woman likes herself. Shit. Call the police.
Yeah.
A mother thinks she's a good mom.
She did it good. Yeah.
Throw her off a cliff.
Right. And there's evidence. Yeah, there's not a lot of good mom models out there.
You're not saying you're better than anyone.
No, I did pretty good, especially with what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Eli, there are other parenting situations that Eli could have been brutalized in. That's not severe ADHD is not a dynamic that goes well for many kids.
No. Yeah. Many of the things that people associate with adult ADHD have nothing to do with ADHD and everything to do with the way they're treated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard the statistic that the average kid hears no like 4 times in an hour, and the average ADHD kid hears no like 30 times in an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The typical way of corralling kids is to shame or punish or discipline, but
it's appease or bribe.
Well, even that, the only way that any of that would work is if their brain is neurotypical enough in a way such that they retain the information and can recall it right. in the moment. If you don't have that mechanism, then it's all for naught, and the parents just get more and more frustrated and more rejecting and more critical, and because that's what they're taught, and the kid just feels more and more like a piece of shit. So you didn't do that.
Yeah. I had this interesting experience with a parent recently where their extremely ADHD kid was falsely trying to make something too sunny to looking at the good side of something to the detriment of the rest of the family. And the mother was explaining to me how hard she was working trying to convince the kid that this was not a sunny situation. This was a bad situation. And I finally was just like, with the way that your kid processes, just stop. Just join them that it's a sunny situation. And she was like, I can do that? I was like, oh, yeah. Like, pick a different battle. This battle, you're going to drive yourself crazy in this battle. And I could say that from like another parent, like parent to parent. Let me just tell you, this is not the cross you want to die on.
Meaning that the parent was like, if I let this kid continue with that perspective, it could be bad for them somehow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, natural consequences are going to work this one out.
Right.
Just join them. Just listen to why they're happy.
And or another priority is let your child have an independent thought that you don't have to stomp out.
Right.
Like, and newsflash, your kid doesn't know shit yet. So some of their ideas
are going to be way off.
Yeah, are going to, but they'll
figure it out.
Yeah. Just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
But you need to let your kids have their own minds, That's what they're trying out, That's maybe 90% of the reason why they're spouting something that's in opposition to other people is that they want to see, is it okay that they have an independent thought? Just let it go.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for that episode in which Rebecca got flooded and overwhelmed. And tune in next time when we find out in the next Rebecca episode if Rebecca can say out loud on the microphone that she's a wonderful parent.
All right. Well, I'm ready. I'll test it out later.
And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you're going to make it through this holiday season. And the best way you can do that is to take care of yourself.